YouTuber, we got some new Juunishishi monsters.
Hey YouTube, what is up? Just had to mess with you guys a little bit. I know I haven't made a ton of videos lately, but I'm still going to be putting a little bit of effort into them. Anyway, there's a bunch of new cards that are being announced for Raging Tempest. A lot of them are very interesting. There's an actual new archetype that's been announced. They were teasing it for a while, but before I get into that, there's one card I want to talk about, and it is Foolish Burial with Belongings. I think that's what the translation equates to. It's essentially Foolish Burial, normal spell, card, you know, stuff like that. You just send a spell or trap to the graveyard as opposed to a monster, and that's actually pretty good. It's such a generic card that it's going to see so much play in so many decks. The fact that it's new means it's going to be a 3, so it's going to be a little busted when we first get it, and if it's too good, it'll be put to 1 on the next ban list, like most cards. But anyway, it's a really good card to use, especially in metal flows. If you just ditch the fusion and then put the fusion back into the deck with its own effect, it's essentially a +1. It's a proxy for Upstart. You can use it in Raid Raptors to basically search out your rank up spells with Necro Vulture. You just send the spell you want to the graveyard, then use Necro Vulture to add to hand. You can also use it as a way to basically just search monsters and fluffles. You can use it in Gem Knights, which I actually think is going to help the deck a lot. And if you still play Monarchs, you could actually use it to send Pantheism or Prime to the graveyard to kickstart your plays. It might add some consistency to the now pretty much dead Monarchs. And now that we talked about that one card, let's talk about the entire new archetype. Okay, so there's a new archetype called Juunishishi. I think that's how it's pronounced. I might be butchering it. If I am, my bad, guys. But, you know, I can't pronounce every word correctly, especially something that's not really even in my language. Anyway, it's based off of the Chinese Zodiac. That's what the whole archetype is based around. It's essentially a Beast Warrior rank 4 spam deck, and it is amazing what you can pull off with just one card in this deck. I'll get to that in a little while, but first, let's actually go over the cards. So far, there are 5 level 4 Beast Warrior Earth type effect monsters that we know of. There are 4 rank 4 Beast Warrior Earth type monsters that we know of, 2 spells and a trap. Although the spells and traps were not shown, we actually saw a picture of them. It's just not clear enough to read what they actually do, but we do know there are 2 spells and a trap, just not really what they do at this point. But we do know what all the monsters do, so let's get into that. First up is the most busted monster in this deck. It is Juunishishi Molmorat. I think that's how it's named. I'm gonna butcher all these guys. Like every card in this deck, it's a Beast Warrior effect Earth type monster, level 4, because this is not a XYZ monster. Its effect is, if this card is normal summon, you send a Juunishishi card from your deck to the graveyard. It's basically a foolish on summon. It helps you set up your extra deck plays later on. Its second effect is an XYZ monster whose original type is Beast Warrior. Essentially, the XYZ monsters for this archetype gains this effect if this card is XYZ material for it. Once per turn, detach 1 XYZ material from this card, special summon 1 Juunishishi Molrat from your hand or deck. And when you consider the fact that you can basically use this card to make a turn 1 Utopic Future off of normal summoning 1 monster, that's actually pretty busted because the XYZs only need 1 material and you just slap them on top. So you can use Molrat, make an XYZ, detach Molrat, special summon Molrat, and put another XYZ on top of that, and then you make Utopic Future. So that's actually pretty crazy. And it has 0 attack and 0 defense, but that's the price to pay for having such a busted effect. We then have Juunishishi Thoroughblade, which is a 1600 attack, 0 defense monster. Its effect is, if it's normal or special, discard a Juunishishi monster, and if you do, you draw a card, which is not too bad. You can set up your graveyard and draw at the same time. And the fact that it gains this effect if it's special summoned means it's even better for you. You don't have to waste your normal summon just to draw 1 card and ditch 1 card if your hand is kind of dead. And its second effect is an XYZ monster whose original type is Beast Warrior. Gains this effect if this card is XYZ material on it, and that effect is, if this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. And the next monster is Juunishishi Viper. It's a level 4 Beast Warrior Earth type like every card in this deck, and it's 1200 attack, 400 defense. Its effect is, during either player's turn, you can target 1 Beast Warrior type XYZ monster you control. That's the cost. You just target his cost, which is kind of ridiculous, and attach this card from your hand or field to it as XYZ material. That is actually really nice. It allows you to set up plays later down the road. And if this card is XYZ material for a Beast Warrior, after damage calculation in which this card battles with an opponent's monster, you get to banish that opponent's monster. So even if you don't kill the monster, the card gets banished, and if you do kill the monster, the card gets banished. Next up, we have Juunishishi Ram, which I like personally. I really do dig its second effect. It's a 400 attack, 2000 defense monster, so you can actually put this in defense and sit on it in case you think you're going to get OTK'd or something like that. It actually is a pretty good defensive wall that not many normal summons can get over. And usually in this format, if you set a card, nobody's expecting it to be a 2k wall, so you might actually make your opponent go like minus 1500 because of how small most of the normal summon monsters in this game are at this point. Its effect is, if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, target 1 Juunishishi monster in your graveyard, except Ram, and special summon it. And its second effect is, if this card is an XYZ material for a Beast Warrior, that card gains this effect. When an opponent's trap that targets activates, you can just negate it if you detach one material. Up next is Juunishishi Rebina. It's a 800 attack, 800 defense monster, and it's very similar to Ram. Its effect is, if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, target one Juunishishi in your graveyard, except Juunishishi Rebina, and add it to your hand. Now note, it doesn't say monster, so you can use this to recycle your spells and traps. Even though we don't know what they are, this card is definitely going to be useful later because it allows you to recover late game. Its second effect is, if this card is an XYZ material for a Beast Warrior, that card gains this effect. When an opponent's spell card that targets is activated, detach one XYZ material from this card and negate that activation. And now onto the XYZ monsters, which have a pretty unique characteristic to them. They can kind of just overlay with one card, and they can overlay on top of each other. So unlike ranking up, where you go from like a rank 3 to a rank 4 to a rank 5, stuff like that, you actually just make rank 4s on top of rank 4s, and you can make like ridiculous 12-stack XYZ monsters if you really wanted to. First up is Juunishishi Bullhorn, which requires 2 level 4 monsters to make, or you could just use its effect of once per turn. You can also XYZ summon Juunishishi Bullhorn by using one Juunishishi monster you control with a different name as the XYZ material. So you can put it on top of XYZs or just the normal monsters. Its other effects allow it to gain the attack and defense of all the materials underneath it, which is kind of silly. And its second effect is, once per turn, you can detach one XYZ material from this card, add one Beast Warrior type monster that can be normal summoned or set from your deck to your hand. So it allows you to get your engine kickstarted. You can just literally normal summon Molmarat and then put Bullhorn on top of it and make another Bullhorn and just keep going from there. You can make pretty ridiculous plays off of literally just normal summoning one card, and I'll get into that at the end of the video. And seeing how this card gains attack from the materials underneath it, it is no surprise that the Juunishishi XYZ monsters pretty much have no attack and no defense. They're literally just question marks, and their attacks and effects are pretty much based on the materials underneath them, which is actually pretty unique for an XYZ monster. Next up, we have Juunishishi Tigress, which requires 3 level 4 monsters, or you could just put it on top of a Juunishishi monster, much like every other Juunishishi XYZ in this game. And its first effect is the same as Bullhorn's, where it just gains the attack and defense of the materials underneath it. And its second effect is, once per turn, detach one XYZ material from this card, target one XYZ monster you control, and one Juunishishi monster in your graveyard. Attach that Juunishishi monster to that XYZ monster as XYZ material. You can literally target an XYZ without any materials and put materials from the graveyard under that card, and then use that card by detaching that material. It's becoming really apparent how broken this archetype is going to be. Next up is Juunishishi Drancia. It has the same effects as the XYZs that I listed before, where you can just put it on top of any other Juunishishi card, and it gains the attack and defense of the materials underneath it. And its other effect is, you can detach one material from this card, target one face-up card in the field, and destroy it. So it's basically the full armor photon of this deck. And lastly, we have Juunishishi Wildbow, and just like every Juunishishi XYZ so far, it doesn't have an attack and defense. It's based on the materials underneath it. It requires 5 level 4 monsters to special summon it, or you could just put it on top of any Juunishishi monster, and much like the other monsters, it gains the attack and defense of the materials underneath it. It also can attack your opponent directly, which is pretty busted when you consider you can make it like a 7k beater if you get the right combo going. And then on top of that, it has another effect. When this card with 12 or more XYZ materials inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can send all the cards in your opponent's hand and on their field to the graveyard, then you change this card to defense position. That is absolutely busted, and putting 12 materials under this card is not going to be impossible because of the way you can loop with this deck. Now, I know I went through a ton of cards just now. It's a ton of information to process, so I'm just going to give you guys an example or two so you can see what you can do with this deck. If you start with a field of Molmarat and Stoic Challenge, you can, in the battle phase, have a 4600 attack Wildbow that can then turn into a Drancia in the main phase 2 with Viper, Thoroughblade, Tigress, and Wildbow as materials. And if your opening hand included Photon Thresher as well, you can make that Wildbow have 7000 attack because you can put multiple Vipers underneath it. That is absolutely nuts. Now, if you want to see how to do this combo, I'm going to put a link down below because I did not find this combo out myself. Reddit user The Gimmick actually wrote it out, so I'm going to put a link to his comment down below so you can follow his steps as to how you make such a busted play off of normal summoning Molmarat. And like I explained before, you can use Molmarat to just make a 1-card F0. That's a pretty straightforward play though. It's just Molmarat, put a card on top of it, detach, special summon Molmarat, put a card on top of it, and then you have Utopic Future then and there just by normal summoning Molmarat pretty much. And if you want to spice up the deck by throwing in some Terratops and a Takaton board, you can make an MX Saber Invoker, and it essentially leaves you with an end phase board of Invoker, Drancia, any other rank 4 you want, and plus 1 card that's searched that is then added to your hand. If you want to see how to do that combo, I'll put a link in the description down below video because I did not find this combo myself. Reddit user Scribbly, I think that's how his name's read, explained it, and I just, passed the information on to you guys. I'm giving him credit. The link is in the description down below. You can click on how to find out how to do that combo just by clicking the link. All in all, this deck's possibilities are still not fully recognized, but it's pretty apparent how strong this deck is going to be, how much it's actually going to power creep, and the fact that it also has access to every other rank 4 in the game is ridiculous. And if your math skills are on point, you've realized that we only showed 9 monsters, and there are 12 different Chinese zodiac symbols. So that means there could be 3 more monsters to add to this broken lineup, and we still don't even know what the spells and traps do. And one last thing I want to add, this is probably a deck you don't want to max C. I could probably deck you out if you max C them in the middle of the game. If they don't go off turn 1 or turn 2, and they're actually just stalling you and you're playing the grind game, and you max C them and then they go off, they could probably deck you out. So you gotta be careful. And with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to follow me on Twitter @Schwabs or like my Facebook page to see when I post these videos. And if you really enjoyed it, don't forget to click subscribe because it's free, it's fun, and I'll see you guys in the next one.